Do doctors, and particularly GPs, welcome that gesture? Or as people who care passionately about their patients, do some of them feel it might just be a gesture too far?
Well, it's pretty difficult, and there's two sides to this coin. First of all, we can't really be open as a GP surgery if the rest of the country has a bank holiday, and that's because we rely on a lot of logistics. We need pharmacies to be open, we need childcare places to be open. So there's lots of, we sort of can't operate in isolation. So it's very difficult for us to be open if no one else is. That's the first thing to say. But obviously we cope with bank holidays all the time in the NHS. The trouble with this is that obviously it was incredibly last minute. And so people already had appointments booked. I have a patient who is booked for tomorrow to have a long-awaited joint replacement operation in the NHS, which is now cancelled. And that must be sort of repeated thousands of times over around the country. So I think it's a sort of last minute nature of it. I know in my practice, we all felt sort of quite uncomfortable about cancelling all our patients. And there are sort of questions around why the funeral couldn't actually have been done on a Sunday, which would have avoided this.
And that's an additional thought which we may well come back to. But I want to pick out something important that you said there in the middle, and it may be because I've been reading too much about regiments and processions and things of that nature. But you said you had a patient who was expecting a hip replacement operation, which by definition is a hospital thing. I began the conversation saying GPs have been told that they can close if they want because it's a bank holiday. So it's across the spectrum of the NHS.
Oh, it's absolutely across the spectrum, from sort of people like me in primary care, pharmacies, GPs, everything in primary care. If you have physiotherapy in the community, all of those sort of type of things, district nurses, people who come into your home to look after you, all of that, all the way through to hospital treatment. Routine operations are cancelled for tomorrow. Routine appointments are cancelled for tomorrow, from what I understand. Chemotherapy and cancer operations and emergency care is all going ahead. So it really is like a Christmas Day type service within the NHS, except with very little notice. That's the difference.
Yeah. No, well, that bows back or nods back to your point about perhaps if the funeral could have been on a Sunday, then it would have been less of a problem. But let's agree, Ellie, you and me, that we park that one there for other folk to think about and reflect, because I don't feel terribly strongly about it one way or the other. Tell you what I do feel strongly about, and you'll answer it brilliantly because you are a GP, primary care expert, is clearly, although it's a bank holiday, completely take that point, illness and accidents won't take a pause. These things still happen. As a professional, what should folk listening to this conversation or watching it do? God forbid they themselves have a domestic accident, or one of their children suddenly mysteriously falls ill, or grandma falls over and loses her balance. What's the code of practice if, God forbid, something horrible goes wrong tomorrow?
So depending on the severity of what's gone wrong, you've got 111 who will give you an idea of where to go. There are urgent care centres open. So I know GP colleagues who often work out of hours or on sort of urgent care centres. Urgent GP centres will be open. They're often based in hospitals. People tend to know where they are in their local area, or you can look it up online. Obviously, A&E is open. Obviously, the ambulance service doesn't stop. So all of those sort of things don't stop. I think some emergency pharmacies will be open. So it's really like a weekend service.